Well, we're going to get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Barbara Weinstein. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the director of the Commission on Social Action of Reform Judaism and the associate director at the Religious Action Center. I want to welcome you to our Zoom on addressing anti-Semitism in the States and nationally. And I want to start with appreciation for our co-sponsors across the reform movement, the American Conference of Cantors, Association of Reform Jewish Educators, Association of Reform Zionists, Central Conference of American Rabbis, Early Childhood Educators, Men of Reform Judaism, National Association for Temple Administration, our program and engagement professionals, the Union for Reform Judaism, and Women of Reform Judaism. The breadth of our co-sponsors among our reform movement partner organizations and affiliates reflects the deep concerns about anti-Semitism and attacks across the country on synagogues, including those within our own reform movement, Jewish institutions more broadly, and Jewish people. And this issue touches each of us, from young preschoolers to clergy and temple administrators and board members who are dealing with growing security needs, the associated costs, and congregants now becoming used to ever-changing security measures at building entrances. But anti-Semitism is not just a threat to Jews, it's also correlated with weakening democracy and institutions overall. Anti-Jewish conspiracy theories flourish when democracy itself is weakened. And that's one reason why we've expanded our nonpartisan Every Voice, Every Vote campaign. And I encourage you to learn more about Every Voice, Every Vote and get involved. The link is going to be in the chat. There's also lots of resources on the Religious Action Center's Anti-Semitism Spotlight page on our website. We've got best practices you can learn from other leaders and congregations across the reform movement, a resource created by the Commission on Social Action specifically about addressing anti-Semitism at the local level. There's opportunities for advocacy and a lot more. You'll hear today about our efforts in Congress and in the states, including a little spotlight on RAC California, our California state-based affiliate, to help shape and pass legislation that will keep Jews and all people safer. Our goal today is to strengthen our collective ability to fight anti-Semitism locally, statewide, nationally, including advocating for increased funding for nonprofit security grants, which you'll hear about from our speakers today. If you have a question, please put it in the Q&A feature in the Zoom so our speakers can see it. Our speakers today, of course, are U.S. Senator Jacky Rosen of Nevada, Assemblymember Jesse Gabriel of California, who is also the chair of the California Jewish Caucus, and we are so honored to have them both with us. It's now my pleasure to turn the Zoom over to Rabbi Rick Jacobs, who is the president of the Union for Reform Judaism. Rabbi Jacobs?
Thank you, Barb, and welcome everyone. I must say, I first met Senator Rosen when she was not just the president of her congregation, Ner Tamid in Henderson, Nevada. She was an outstanding temple president. And I have to believe, Senator Rosen, that those skills have been very handy to use in the U.S. Congress, because those are universal leadership skills, how to bring people together, how to do good work, and very often to accomplish things that other people say can't be done. But that was your legacy as a president, and you bring that into your work in the U.S. Congress. Let me also say, Senator Rosen, that when I speak to our incoming presidents from this moment on, I always say, if you do a really good job as temple president, who knows, you may go on to serve in the U.S. Congress just like
That's
Senator
right.
Jacky Rosen. So we're trying to raise up more people who will see public service as core to what it means to be a Jewish leader. But you set the bar quite high for all of us.
Thank you.
It's important to know that Senator Rosen is the second female senator from Nevada who is in her second Senate term. And a little bit of history because we're in the 250th year of America. She is the third female Jewish senator in American history. In a Congress where bipartisan work is almost unheard of, Senator Rosen is the co-founder and co-chair of the Bipartisan Senate Task Force for Combating Anti-Semitism and the Bipartisan Abraham Accords Caucus. She knows the ways in which anti-Semitism deeply affects us, our concerns, the concerns of our congregations, and all of our congregational leaders. In fact, after Congregation Beth Israel in Jackson, Mississippi, was firebombed in an anti-Semitic attack back in January of this year, the president, Zach Schemper, went to D.C. and met members of Congress. But his meeting with Senator Rosen was different from all the others. Zach shared that when he met Senator Rosen to lobby on behalf of the nonprofit security grant program, he was immediately taken in by her deep empathy and her very, very deep familiarity with the reality of being a congregational leader, especially in a challenging moment. And when Rabbi Jen Lader of Temple Israel in West Bloomfield, Michigan, met with her in the aftermath of the anti-Semitic attack they suffered, Senator Rosen not only listened carefully, but incorporated many of Rabbi Lader's suggestions into the bipartisan Jewish American Security Act that she and Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma introduced back in May. This critical bill would first provide $1 billion in funding for the nonprofit security grant, so deeply needed, and that would improve security at all congregations, all synagogues, all Jewish institutions, and other faith-based and nonprofit organizations. The bill would create a new federal grant program to support local law enforcement, to support houses of worship. It would protect Jewish students on college campuses by designating an anti-Semitism coordinator at the U.S. Department of Education, requiring a Title IV coordinator on campuses, and improving hate crimes reporting. It would hold large social media platforms accountable by requiring transparency regarding their handling of anti-Semitic content online. We have proudly endorsed the bill and are advocating strongly for its passage. So now let me turn over the webinar to our extraordinary friend and leader, Senator Jacky Rosen, to share more about the bill and this moment that we are all experiencing. Senator Rosen, please.
Well, thank you, Rabbi Jacobs. I'm so grateful for the kind introduction and for your friendship over many, many years, and even speaking at the Scheit seminar and so many things. But the entire team at the RAC, again, my relationship over so many years, bringing us together in ways that we can promote social action, social justice. And today we talk about fighting anti-Semitism. And to your list of sponsors and today or collaborators today, organizations, as part of my synagogue and part of my Jewish journey, and even synagogue president all the way along, I think I've been involved with just about every organization that you've mentioned, and I am grateful for their kindness, for their leadership, and for their willingness to always be out there and do good things to strengthen Jewish life in America, from preschool all the way up through, senior citizens and everything in between. We say from simcha to sorrow, everything in between. And as one of only a handful of Jewish women to ever serve in the United States Senate, as we said, the first and only former synagogue president, I urge others, come talk to me. There's a path. Serving in the Senate, my Jewish identity, well, it's deeply personal. It is part of who I am, and it is part of how I lead. It's part of why I've always believed that public service is about strengthening community. It's about protecting people. It's about ensuring that every American can live openly and safely as who they are. And these values were instilled in me by my family first as a young girl, and by my synagogue community in Las Vegas as I got older, and by the Jewish traditions that teach us that we all are responsible for one another, that we have responsibilities for not just ourselves and our community, but to pass on to the next generation. These are the values I know that are shared by everyone in this room. And again, I'm grateful for all of the partnership that everyone has built through the years. And this year, as we gather, this year, well, not so long before high holidays, a little over a month to go, we're confronting a difficult reality. Anti-Semitism rising at an unprecedented level. Since October 7th, we've seen record-breaking numbers of anti-Semitic incidences. We've seen threats against synagogues, Jewish institutions. We've seen harassment of Jewish students. We've seen anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. I don't know where they get them. They are exploding online every single day. And sadly, we've seen acts of violence directed at Jewish Americans for the sole reason that they are Jewish. The sole reason that they are Jewish. And I wish I could say that these were isolated incidents, but they are not. They're part of a broader and deeply troubling trend. A trend that has our communities, my community, scared. A trend that's becoming increasingly normalized. A trend that requires thoughtful, coordinated effort in response. It's why I've made combating anti-Semitism one of my top priorities in the Senate. It's why Senator James Lankford, when I asked him to co-chair and found the bipartisan Senate task force to combat anti-Semitism 6.5 years ago, he joined me in this. And what started as just the two of us has grown into a coalition that now includes more than half the United States Senate, evenly divided between Democrats and Republicans. This is extremely important to James and I, that we do it in this way so that things don't become a political football, and that we legislate in ways that meet the moment, protect the future. And we all know here that anti-Semitism is a canary in the coal mine for other minority groups. Because when Jewish hatred is okay, when it's normalized, and there's a permission set for people to be anti-Semitic, other minorities are not far behind. Combating anti-Semitism, it must not, cannot, never should be a partisan issue. It's an American issue. It's a human issue. It demands a response from all of us here and all of our friends around the country. And so let me reiterate, combating domestic anti-Semitism is an American issue. American Jews, well, they're afraid to go to the deli, afraid to go to their synagogue, to go to their college campuses. And I can tell you that, I would say probably 99.9% of those Jewish Americans don't have Benjamin Netanyahu's phone number in their pocket, and they have nothing to do with what happens in a country that is not theirs. I can tell you that security is the #1 line item for every synagogue and Jewish communal institution in America. So lawmakers on both sides of the aisle can disagree with the Netanyahu government or other things that are happening worldwide and prioritize keeping United States Jewish communities safe. Their Jewish communities are Jewish communities here in the United States. This is the message I'm conveying to my colleagues every day. There's an issue here, there's a permission set here, and it is hurting everyone here, and this is what we need to focus on from the left, from the right in this moment. We have to uphold our democratic values, fight for social justice, push back against hatred in America whenever, wherever, and whoever it's manifesting from, period. Right now, the stakes couldn't be higher. Our Jewish communities are scared, and they need us. We must all remind our Jewish communities, however they choose to worship or not, that we stand with them. We must take action to fight anti-Semitism together, Democrats, Republicans, independents, all across the board. Like I said, I can't say this over and over again enough, because combating anti-Semitism, combating hate should never, ever be politicized. So the threats facing Jewish Americans today, I feel, require a broader strategy. That's why Senator Lankford and I introduced what is the bipartisan Jewish American Security Act. And it's made possible in part because of all the work the RAC has done. And so many of the organizations you listed here earlier have helped us to talk about and to make the bill a good bill, a bill that works for congregations and community centers for Jewish people all across this country. And this bill does represent the most comprehensive federal effort in years to address anti-Semitism and strengthen security of Jewish American communities. That's why it is endorsed, and I am proud to say endorsed by organizations across the ideological spectrum from A to Z. And it takes action where we know Jewish communities are being targeted on college campuses, online, and in our communities. The legislation strengthens protections for our Jewish students, our children. It improves our ability to identify and address anti-Semitism in our colleges and universities. We know what's happened in the past. And it was also written in a way that would not only benefit Jewish students, but all students by strengthening Title VI protections and requirements. It increases transparency and tracking of anti-Semitic content online so that we can better understand how hatred spreads and, sadly, how it is amplified. And it drastically increases the funding for nonprofit security grant program, authorizing $1 billion for the NSGP reform so it can work better. I can tell you from my own congregations across this country, security is the #1 budget item that they have. How to protect themselves, our buildings, our students, our families, particularly as we come upon high holidays when people are afraid to go to worship. I saw a question on a poll from a Jewish organization that said, are you afraid to wear a Jewish symbol? Are you afraid to be publicly identified as Jewish? I can tell you, without seeing the results of the poll, that's probably going to be an overwhelming yes. Probably going to be an overwhelming yes. And that's how I know the challenges before us are significant. And I also know that our Jewish community has shown time and time again, century after century, resilience and determination in the face of hostility and adversity. And because of your leadership in this moment, I am confident that we can continue making progress together. So I want to deeply thank everyone here for your friendship, for your support, for your advocacy, for your voice, your partnership, that you go out when it's hard, that you make sure that people are taken care of, that you stand up and that you speak out, that you know how standing for something, what it means, what it means to stand up for those who can't stand for themselves or are too afraid. So thank you to the RAC. Thank you to all of you. Thank you to everyone that's here today on the rest of the call that will work every day to strengthen Jewish life, like I said, from our Mommy and Me classes all the way up to our senior groups, everything in between. I am grateful, and we need you now more than ever. The work will continue. Thank you.
Senator Rosen, we are so deeply grateful to you for your extraordinary leadership, especially the integrity and vision you bring to your work in the Senate. All Americans, and especially Jewish Americans, feel more secure on your watch, feel more that the values they care about so deeply will be preserved and protected. We can't thank you enough for all that you do. Toda, toda, toda. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
And we seem to have some exceptional former temple leaders on today's webinar. So let me introduce yet another one, Heidi Segal, who is the past president of Temple Israel of Hollywood, but not yet a candidate for the Senate. But hey, Heidi, you never know. Most importantly, however, for today, Heidi is the chair of the Commission of Social Action of Reform Judaism and a very gifted, wise, and strong leader of our reform movement's social action work. And she maybe is going to tell us, or maybe she won't, but she was out there since 5 a.m. today, caring for some of the most vulnerable members of New York City. You walk the talk, you exemplify these values. Heidi, please, we're honored for you to share.
Rabbi Jacobs, thank you so much. Your support and your leadership is so important to myself and to all of us in the reform movement, and we are stronger because of it and because of you. So thank you so much. And I will give a shout out to Central Synagogue. I'm temporarily housed right now in New York City, and I was honored to join them this morning, where they shut down the street of their congregation to provide services for local folks in need. We served meals, they provided showers, haircuts, every type of clothing that you could imagine. And it was really an honor to be able to participate with them. And the work that they're doing is just extraordinary. As Rabbi Jacobs said, I chair the Commission on Social Action. The Commission is a body that brings together the Union for Reform Judaism, the Central Conference for American Rabbis, and all the reform movements, affiliates, and professional organizations to shape and advance our shared justice priorities. A year ago, we created and shared a resource on addressing anti-Semitism on the local level that I encourage everyone on this Zoom to look at and make use of. I'm reading through the chat and I see many questions that are being asked, and I think many can be addressed by using that tool and by using it in your congregations. And I understand that the link is being put in the chat. Thanks, Jacob. In California, like so many other states, we've been working for years to address anti-Semitism, including how to teach our students about this ancient form of hate. RAC California, our state project, one of 9, has a wonderful working relationship with Assemblymember Jacky Gabriel, who I'm honored to also say is really a longtime close friend of mine. Jacky is an extraordinary leader and someone that I'm so proud to know personally, but also look to as a leader in our state. He represents the San Fernando Valley in the California State Legislature, and just has a history that he will speak with Rabbi Pesner about in terms of his leadership in both the Jewish world and in government. He's also the co-chair of the California Legislative Jewish Caucus, where he's led statewide efforts to combat anti-Semitism, strengthen hate crimes laws, and unite diverse communities in the fight against hate and bigotry of all forms. To that end, he was a co-author of AB 715 to address discrimination and anti-Semitism in public schools, which passed unanimously last year and signed into law. And I'm really proud to say, and I know that he and Rabbi Pesner will speak about this, had the strong support of RAC California and RAC National. I'm thrilled to have my good friend in conversation with another good friend, the director of the Religious Action Center, Rabbi Jonah Pesner. I can't imagine 2 more extraordinary leaders to talk with us about what's going on in my state.
Oh, Heidi, I think we all in this Zoom agree. You're a gift to the reform movement. Your leadership on the Commission on Social Action has been spectacular. Assemblyman Gabriel knows very well that your leadership in California, with RAC California, with Temple Israel of Hollywood, has also been stellar. And you're a mentor and a confidant both to Assemblyman Gabriel and to myself. And let me just turn to you, Assemblyman Gabriel. I first learned about you when Heidi several years ago said to me, "You have got to know my friend Jesse. He's a superstar. He's a committed Jew. He's a mission-driven guy, and you're going to love him." And she was, of course, right, because Heidi's right about everything, right, Jesse? So here we are.
He is right about everything, for sure.
But we want to hear from you. So let me ask you just the first question. Talk about what motivated you to enter public life, particularly during such a challenging and fraught time. What drives you, and what is your calling, so to speak?
Yeah, thank you so much. Let me just say, Rabbi, thank you. It's such an honor to be here with you and all of the amazing leaders and activists you've gathered on this call, and an honor to be with Rabbi Jacobs, who provides such extraordinary leadership to the Jewish community. And of course, to my dear friend, Heidi Segal, who I would go so far as to say she is a gift to the Jewish people. Just an amazing leader. And Rabbi Jacobs has got me thinking. Senator Rosen mentioned we've had 3 Jewish women in the United States Senate. 2 of them, Barbara Boxer and Dianne Feinstein, were from California. So if Heidi's ready to follow in their footsteps, I will be the first to volunteer for her campaign, because she's just such an incredible mensch and dear friend. I think, as I reflect on your question, what really has led me to where I am is really the involvement of my family. I am the son of a nurse and an educator. My grandparents were activists, both in the Jewish sense and in the broader communal sense. My mom's parents helped to found Temple Isaiah, a Reform congregation in Lafayette, California, which is famous because it was where Adam Schiff had his bar mitzvah. But they were also active in the civil rights movement and on behalf of farm workers and on behalf of causes for social justice. And so we used to have these very lively conversations around the Shabbat dinner table, and they were always about politics and current events and social justice and tikkun olam and how we could make a difference in the world. And so I grew up not with an aspiration to make a lot of money, and I've been successful in not making a lot of money, but with an aspiration to help make the world a better place, to serve other people, to be part of the work that we are commanded to do as Jews, to build a more just and inclusive society. And so as I, began my law career and worked for a little bit on Capitol Hill, these thoughts of public service were, and of doing something that would help the community and strengthen the community were always in my mind. And so very fortunate to have had the opportunity to serve in the legislature.
Jonah, are you frozen? Okay, I'm gonna take over until he comes back, if that makes sense, Barb. Yep.
Yes, please, Heidi. Thank you.
Okay. Jesse, talk to me about how your Jewish values inform your work.
Well, they are, as you know, Heidi, they're fundamental to the work. And I feel so fortunate every day to be Jewish, both what our tradition teaches us about how we approach people, how we interact with people, how we approach issues, just the way that I try to consider all sides of an issue and think about the example from the Talmud and what our tradition teaches about how we think about different perspectives and what people have to offer. But I think that for me, most where they come into play is the issues that I decide to focus on. And this unrelenting commitment to justice that we see that is so deeply embedded in our Jewish tradition, in our Jewish wisdom. As Heidi knows, I have 3 little boys at home, and my youngest, Noah, we gave him the middle name Isaiah. And we gave him the middle name Isaiah in part in tribute to my grandparents, Lillian and Fred Katzberg of blessed memory, who helped to found Temple Isaiah. But in part because I've just always, since I was a kid, captivated by the writings of the prophet Isaiah and what he says. And, we're approaching the high holidays and we'll read on Yom Kippur what he commands us. And it's not this rote observance of the commandments. It's this idea that we have to get out there and we have to help the widow and the orphan and the stranger among us and the work that we have to do for poor people. And all of that always spoke very, very deeply to me. And so when I'm, find myself in this privileged position to try to be able to make a difference and bend the arc of history, if you will, my Jewish values have really been a guiding light for me in terms of where I want to focus and what I want to work on.
Thank you, Jesse. We've talked around the notion of a Jewish caucus, and I feel like California is very, very fortunate to have a active Jewish caucus, which I know has existed longer than you have been in the legislature, but you really have brought it to the forefront and really made it as active as it is. Can you talk about the role that it plays in the legislature and also how the caucus engages with groups like RAC California?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am so proud of our Jewish caucus. I'm proud to be a member. I'm proud to be the chair. I was listening to what Senator Rosen was talking about with her leadership of a synagogue and wondering if synagogue politics is more complicated than U.S. Senate politics. But we have an incredible caucus. It is 18 members of the legislature. So there's 120 members of the legislature here in California. 18 are members of the Jewish caucus. So that's substantial. What is beautiful about our caucus is we are the only diversity caucus, and we have wonderful partnerships with our colleagues in the Black Caucus and the Latino Caucus and the Women's Caucus and LGBTQ Caucus. We're the only caucus that has affiliate members. So of our 13 members, 5 are people who were raised Jewish and identify as Jewish. And then we have 5 affiliate members who maybe my colleague Gail Pellerin, her husband is Jewish and her children were Jewish and are Jewish, or people. We actually have 2 members of the legislature who found out through DNA testing that they are the descendants of conversos. And so they have become members of the caucus and are very identified and have been incredible allies of ours in the work that we have done. And we see our role as fundamentally to be a voice for the community. And so we work really hard to advocate for what we call consensus Jewish community priorities, fighting anti-Semitism, working on issues related to hate crimes and community security and security grants. And we're really proud of the work we did this year to get $80 million in ongoing funding, annual funding for the California Nonprofit Security Grant Program, and working on the California-Israel relationship, so things that we think are really important to our community, but also to bring Jewish values into the policymaking process. And one of the things that I am most proud of is that every year we have a list of what we call our priority bills, which are issues, bills that are related to Jewish community issues. And then we also have what we call our Tikkun Olam priority bills, which are bills that we think represent our Jewish values and often have to do with issues like homelessness or foster youth or environmental protection. And so it's always a really special moment for me when we walk in there to meet with Governor Newsom to make the pitch on our bills, and we're talking to him about our Tikkun Olam priority bills, and it's a really amazing thing. And so we work really hard to bring our Jewish values into the policy process. We are incredibly grateful for the deep partnership from RAC California and from the Reform Movement and from a lot of our partners in the Jewish communal world. And we view politics as a team sport. We view Tikkun Olam as a team sport. And we have just benefited so tremendously from the wisdom and guidance and partnership of RAC California and of you too personally. So thank you for that.
Well, I was going to say, speaking as part of the team on RAC California, it's really been wonderful when we can work together, not just on issues that directly impact our community, but on so many pieces of legislation currently and in the past. And so ranging from criminal justice, homelessness, and I mean, I think right now it's fair to say that we're spending a lot of time on issues that are impacting our community. And as a former Temple president who's had to access that security funding, thank you very, very much. We've seen our security costs skyrocket over the last 5 years, if not before. And we're really grateful for both the work being done on the national level and in California on that. Can you talk a little bit about what inspired you to co-author AB 715, which I know is a bill that both of us really are proud has come through the legislature, and talk about what that law does specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. So just, I think by way of background, I know that Senator Rosen, in her very eloquent remarks, mentioned the anti-Semitism that we've seen in the wake of October 7th, but really the work on AB 715 predates October 7th, because we were seeing already incidents of anti-Semitism in the classroom here in the California, things that were very troubling to all of us. And so we had been in deep conversation as a caucus and with our community partners about how to best tackle this issue. And we decided in the wake of October 7th and just the proliferation of anti-Semitism and the number of issues we were seeing that we had to take decisive action. And so we decided that we would write a bill that was focused on classroom anti-Semitism. We decided that would be the one and only priority bill of the Jewish caucus as a way to underscore to our colleagues in the legislature the urgency that we felt around this issue. So normally we have anywhere from 5 to 10 priority bills, and instead we said this is our only priority bill because we want to talk to you about how urgent this issue is. And it really builds off the U.S. national strategy to combat anti-Semitism that was prepared during the Biden administration. And as you know, we just had our former second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, who led that effort, who was here with us in Sacramento. And so we really tried to think about all of the different ways that we could address anti-Semitism in the classroom. And so we have things in there that are sort of proactive on the front end with new protections around curriculum and instructional materials. We have things that help to provide remedies on the back end. So when there is, an unfortunate incident of anti-Semitism in the classroom, how is it addressed? How is it handled? What does the school board do? What is the role for the state superintendent of public instruction? How can we make sure that parents are getting notified about all of this? And then one of the biggest things that the bill does that I'm really proud of, and I think it ties in with some of what Barb talked about before and what Rabbi Jacobs talked about, is it strengthens protections for both Jewish students and non-Jewish students. Any student who is at risk of hate in the classroom, and it does this by creating an Office of Civil Rights for Education in the state of California. And then underneath that, we have an anti-Semitism prevention coordinator. So really modeled after the work that we had in DC, with Deborah Lipstadt, who was the special envoy on anti-Semitism. We think to have one person in government who is focused on the issue, who can educate educators about anti-Semitism, who can help to address complaints and make sure that they are remedied in the right way, in the right fashion, on the right timeline, who can work with the legislature on new ideas and new legislation, and also who can track all of these incidents of anti-Semitism to make sure we have good data and a complete picture. And I think one of the things that was very concerning to many of us is we would hear about issues of anti-Semitism, when there are Jewish students in the classroom or engaged Jewish parents, but we worry a lot about what is happening in the many school districts in California where there is no Jewish student in the classroom, or there is functionally no Jewish community. What is being taught about Jews, and what may be happening to young people who have never met a Jewish person, and what they may be learning about our community. So we worked really hard to come up with this comprehensive whole of government approach, really modeled after this U.S. national strategy. We had real opposition to the bill, as you know, but we worked through that, and I think it was just a tremendous victory for our caucus and really for the entire community that linked armed, this really broad coalition that RAC played a leadership role in, to pass. And it passed 71-0 through the state assembly and 35-0 through the state senate. It was signed into law by Governor Newsom. And so it was a great victory. And for those of you that have been watching, there was actually a lawsuit to challenge it, to invalidate it on constitutional grounds. And that was just dismissed with prejudice. So the law has been upheld as constitutional by the courts. And we were very proud of the work we did to bring that law across the finish line.
Thank you. And thank you for the shout out. I know that it was important for us to be on the team that helped work on this, but you spoke a little bit about how fraught it's been even since the passage, but the dynamics were complicated from the beginning, I know, with this piece of legislation. Can you talk about a little bit more depth about the complicated dynamics around AB 715 during its consideration? And if you can speak to the role that we played at all, that would also be great.
Yeah, look, I think there were complications as you know, Heidi, complications on multiple levels, complications inside of complications. All of us were very mindful of free speech and very mindful of academic freedom. And as a son and grandson and cousin and nephew of educators, these were things that were very, very important to me personally, and I know important to our caucus. And we are a tradition that reveres educators. The highest compliment you can give someone is to call them your rabbi, to call them your teacher. So we took all these things seriously, and then there were differences of opinion inside the Jewish community, unsurprisingly, and we've all experienced that around our Shabbat dinner tables and our synagogues, in our community centers. And so, how did we get the community on the same page in terms of what is the right approach? And these were issues that required a lot of nuance. And I think RAC California is really good at nuance, and really good at coalition building, and I think really helped us behind the scenes in some really important ways that you all probably don't get enough credit for, to forge consensus, to find a path, to think with nuance and operate with nuance. And, ultimately, I believe we assembled the broadest ever coalition of Jewish groups to back a single piece of legislation. People from, the northern tip of the state down to the Mexico border, people of all observance levels, and, Sephardic and Mizrahi and Ashkenazi and Russian-speaking Jews and Israelis and Reform and Conservative and Orthodox and, everybody in between. We were really able to help bring the entire community together around what we think are some very, very common sense anti-discrimination principles. And I'm really grateful for the role that RAC played to help us navigate that conversation with nuance and ultimately find consensus within our community, which is not often an easy thing to do.
No, and your leadership again was phenomenal here, and I know took hours and hours and hours, if not days and weeks. But thank you. What lessons does the enactment of AB 715 hold for other states? Because I think that's what's really exciting here, is when we think about how that extension can happen.
Yeah, and I think that's I think one of the things that you and I know we talked about during this is the extra pressure we felt, because we knew that this was going to be an important part of the national conversation, and in many ways could probably become precedential. If California could do something, then it could become precedent for the rest of the country. And also if we failed. So we felt that the stakes were really, really high. We felt that pressure, that we knew people not just in Cal, it wasn't just about protecting my kids and kids in the state of California, but that this would have national implications for for Jewish communities and for Jewish students. But I think to me, the first and most important lesson is that progress is possible. And I know that we are living in a moment that can feel very, very overwhelming. And it's easy if you spend any amount of time on social media or Twitter or whatever to feel instantly overwhelmed by the moment that we are living in. But this, and as you know, there were some very powerful political forces that were opposed to this bill, that lined up in opposition to it, that sued to invalidate it after the fact. But we worked really hard, and we made our case and we did our homework. And the fact that we had extremely progressive Democrats and extremely conservative Republicans and everybody in between come together to support this bill, I think is a testimony to the fact that progress is possible, even in this incredibly hyper-polarized political environment. I think some of the other lessons are that unity is key. So the fact that we were able to get different segments and streams of the Jewish community on the same page, that we were speaking with one voice, was really important. And then I also think that one of the things that I constantly reflect on is issues that are so important to us are often invisible to our non-Jewish colleagues. Not because they don't care. In fact, many of them are wonderfully supportive allies, but just because they are not issues that are part of that they're familiar with. And I always remind members of my caucus, there are more Latinos in the state of California than Jews in the world. I'll say that again. There are more Latinos in the state of California than Jews in the world. And so many of my colleagues are representing districts in the legislature, in the Assembly and the State Senate that have functionally no Jewish population. We tend to be clustered in LA and the Bay Area and San Diego and a few other places, but a lot of my colleagues from the far north or the Central Valley, they don't really have a large Jewish population. And so they may not understand our issues. They don't understand what is not because they're ignorant, but just because it is not a big part of what's happening in the 1 million people or 500,000 people that they represent. And so a lot of what we had to do is do education. And I think when, colleagues heard that I have 6 security guards outside of the synagogue where I take my kids to Hebrew school, right? And where we took our kids to preschool, and what it's like to live as a Jew in the state of California in 2026, I think, frankly, many of them were shocked. And what we did is we brought students from around California who had experienced anti-Semitism to testify in committees. And I watched in real time the impact that it had on my colleagues. I watched it break their hearts when they heard the stories of these Jewish students who had, Nazi flags taped to their backpacks, or the kind of verbal harassment that they had to endure, the things that teachers had said to them. So I think that it really was a reminder to me that, we often assume as a community, and I'm guilty of this, that people understand what's going on, that people understand the issues that the Jewish community is facing. And I think we often need to take a step back and remind ourselves that many, many people in public life don't have a lot of knowledge about our community. They may not have had any Jewish friends growing up. And so we have to do the work to help build the understanding, to build the education, to help them understand why it is that we feel so passionate about these issues and why we need the legal changes that we need to protect our community.
I am so happy you went into such detail there with that, because I think it also is a testament to the long-term investment that you've had with the Jewish caucus, because it didn't just begin with this bill. I know that you have brought those voices to the legislature from the very beginning, whether it's on a Holocaust Remembrance Day or other types of opportunities that you have to raise the Jewish voice and to bring in the specific concerns that our communities have. So thank you so much for doing that. Rabbi Pesner's internet is going in and out and in and out. I'm going to toss it to him to ask the next question, since it's one that I know is deeply important to him. And we're going to shift gears a little bit. But Jonah, I love pinch hitting for you. If I need to step it back in, I will.
You were doing great. I could hear everything, but just froze. But now I'm not frozen. It's clearly an anti-Semitic internet provider. What can I say, Jesse? Be that as it may, something that's on a lot of our folks' minds, and in a minute, we're going to open it up to questions from the hundreds of people who have gathered to hear you. But, we live in very polarized, hyper-polarized times, and we work in a two-party system. So there really is in every election a binary choice. And now that we're seeing anti-Semitism rearing its ugly head in both parties, now it rears itself differently, obviously, but it's in both. How are you navigating as a Jew and a committed elected official? How are you navigating that dynamic?
Look, it's a great question. I think it's top of mind for a lot of us, both who are involved in politics and just also existing as Jews more broadly in our society. I don't know that I have all the answers. I'd love to hear Rabbi Jacobs and your perspective on it and get a little rabbinical wisdom. But I think where I have arrived is um, the viewpoint that we have anti-Semitism in both political parties, and we have to be honest about that. In fact, we have it outside of both of those political parties. It is manifesting itself across the spectrum, and that's one of the things that's so scary about it. And I'm often reminded, for those of you that have been to Yad Vashem in Jerusalem, you walk in at the beginning, it doesn't start with the Holocaust, it starts with the propaganda that led up to the Holocaust. And I'm always struck by they have these two posters on the wall. One is accusing the Jews of being the Bolsheviks trying to undermine society, and the one right next to it is accusing the Jews of being the bankers, and, controlling global finance and trying to undermine society. And obviously, you can't be the banker and the Bolshevik at the same time. And yet, we have folks on the right here in America who are making similar arguments, and we have folks on the left here in America who are making similar arguments, and it's really it's scary because it's blossoming across the political spectrum. And so the way I look at it is that it'd be very easy and convenient for me as someone who's a Democrat to go say, point out all of the right-wing anti-Semitism and the anti-Semitism occurring on the far right and in the Republican Party and, things that Republican leaders have said that are irresponsible, but that's too easy. And I think my job as a Democrat is to fight anti-Semitism on the left. And to be outspoken and we talked about Jewish values. I have here on my wall in my office in Sacramento, an office down in LA, the quote from Pirkei Avot from Rabbi Hillel about, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? And so I have a responsibility inside of the Democratic Party to call out, where I see anti-Semitism, where I see anti-Zionism that becomes anti-Semitism, and to be honest about that. And that's uncomfortable and it's difficult and it's not fun to have those conversations with people who are part of your place in the ideological wilderness or part of your political party. But I think that that's what this moment demands of all of us. And I think for all of us as Jews, we have to understand while we may be divided on other issues, we have to have common cause on fighting anti-Semitism. And so I will work as hard as I can with Republican Jewish colleagues, with independent Jewish colleagues, with Jews of every political stripe to fight anti-Semitism, because at the end of the day, we're all fighting for the same thing. We're fighting for the safety of our kids, for the safety of our communities. But in the same way that I have to go fight anti-Semitism in the Democratic Party, I expect my Republican Jewish colleagues to go fight anti-Semitism in the Republican Party. And we have to hold each other accountable to that.
What a fabulous answer. And it's a good reminder that what we heard from Senator Rosen, that the bill, the Jewish American Security Act, on a federal level, is a bipartisan, bicameral bill. And we should invoke the name Senator Jim Lankford, who had the courage to stand with Senator Rosen and introduce the bill. Senator Lankford is a longtime friend of the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, having found areas of deep-rooted faith-based alignment with Rabbi Saperstein and the RAC over many years around issues that we care about together. So hopefully we can overcome anti-Semitism in a bipartisan way, or a nonpartisan way. It shouldn't be a partisan question. You addressed this a little bit earlier in terms of how we replicate AB 715. Do you have any more kind of advice around the politics of it, like lessons learned about how we actually legislature by legislature, or if there is a national strategy when you talk to your fellow legislators? I know there are Jewish caucuses now in various states around the country. What advice do you have about, kind of replicating this experience across the country?
It's a great question. I mean, I think one of the other things that I should mention, and I want to give a huge shout out to my colleagues in the Assembly, Assemblymember Rick Chavez-Zabur and Assemblywoman Dawn Addis, who were the lead authors of the bill. And that was a very intentional choice by our caucus. So Assemblymember Zabur is, as I described, one of the affiliate members of our caucus, longtime LGBTQ civil rights leader. So he could speak about this as very consistent with and really similar to the work that he did as an LGBTQ civil rights leader to make sure that LGBTQ kids are safe and protected in our classrooms. And then Dawn Addis, who had a multi-decade career as a public school teacher, right? So to the extent that there was any notion that we were trying to silence educators or this was an anti-educator bill, I mean, this is a longtime classroom teacher, California Teachers Association union member, and so we decided as a caucus that they would be the best two people to sort of be the lead authors of the bill, and they just spoke to it from their personal experience with such incredible integrity and charisma, but more than just incredible personal advocacy, I think setting the frame for what we're trying to do, right? This is not about silencing educators. This is not about, there was arguments that we're trying to elevate the Jewish community above other communities or essentialize things. So we tried to think about from the foundation, how do we roll this out? This is advancing the purposes of federal civil rights law. I know a lot of that was written in your conference room, Rabbi Pesner, but consistent with the purposes of civil rights law, of civil rights protections. It's the same thing that we would do for any other community. And again, the work that we did to establish this Office of Civil Rights so that we could help Jewish students and also protect students of all faiths and backgrounds at the same time. For me, the sweet spot of the work that we do in the Jewish Caucus is when we are helping our community and helping other communities at the same time, right? If we are fighting hate in a way that is going to protect synagogues and protect day schools and also protect immigrants and the API community and others who have, been subject to discrimination in California here, that is, for me, both the right way to do public policy, the right way to do this as a elected official representing a diverse community, but it is so, for me, deeply resonant with the Abraham Joshua Heschel model of how we do advocacy, right? And how we, and our Jewish values, where we're going to fiercely stand up and protect ourselves, but we're also going to stand up and protect other communities. And that's the example we see, in our tradition dating back to the very, very beginning of the tradition. And so we have tried to, in this legislation and in the other work we do, model that example of protecting our community, but protecting all communities at the same time.
Then you quoted, of course, the first question, if not for myself, who will be for me. We all have to clean up the anti-Semitism in our own communities. And if I'm for myself alone, what am I? To be for myself alone is to become unhuman. What? And so, of course, the theory of the case of your legislation, as with the approach that we take in the reform movement, is if you want to have a friend, you better be a friend. And working with educators, working with the various civil rights groups and impacted communities. So thank you, Jesse, for that. And of course, the last of the three questions is, if not now, when? So in a moment, not quite yet, I'm going to turn it over to the amazing Barb Weinstein, who's going to do the call to action. What, if not now, when, what we can actually do. But before we do that, one last question. They say the best antidote to anti-Semitism is Jewish joy. Where do you find Jewish joy in your life?
The easy answer is my kids. I have these three beautiful little boys who are just the light of my life. I think we're a big motivator of the work that we do. And actually, one of my non-Jewish colleagues said to me what really struck him when we were working on AB 715 is the fact that we said, we will do anything to protect our kids. And because I think one of the foundations of our tradition is I am obsessed with my kids. I love them. There is nothing that makes me happier than watching them grow and thrive and embrace their Jewish identity. My oldest just came back he's about to turn 11. He came back from a month at Jewish summer camp and asked that we start doing Havdalah more regularly. And I'm just such a beautiful thing. And I think about what my grandfather and grandmother and great grandparents would think about the fact that there's this kid who, in spite of everything going on in the world, is excited to be Jewish and wants to be Jewish and wants to do Havdalah. And then the other little piece I'd add to that, just from a public service perspective, and Heidi alluded to this, we have really tried, as we are educating our colleagues, about the Jewish community, not just to Holocaust and Israel and anti-Semitism, but and all of those are obviously such important parts of our story, but all of the other pieces of it to expose them to Jewish culture and food and tradition. A couple of years ago, we brought Mishloach Manot on Purim to every member of the legislature, and all of these smiles and people asking all these questions. And the thing that always makes me feel really good, whenever we share our tradition with people, people love it. Like if you've ever seen non-Jews at a Jewish wedding doing the horror, I mean, they are having a blast. So we have this beautiful tradition that is full of joy and we have so much to offer. And I think sometimes we don't share enough of it. And so a lot of what we've tried to do as a caucus is also share some of these wonderful things about being Jewish. And that's given me a lot of joy as well.
I love that image of you delivering Mishloach Manot, spreading Jewish joy. And I think that's something we all need to think about is how do we reach out to our neighbors across lines with joy, not just with demands. With that, let's turn it to the thank you, Jesse Gabriel. I know everybody on the Zoom will do a silent cheer from Jewish summer camp. Glad to know that you have a child at a Jewish summer camp. And let's turn to the amazing Barb Weinstein. Thank you, Barb, for organizing this webinar. We would not have done this without Barbara Weinstein.
Thank you, Jonah and Assemblymember Gabriel. So appreciative of your leadership and your joining us here today. We have a few next steps for everybody. And the first is exactly what you saw here on this Zoom, building relationships with your own state and local and federal legislatures. Think about what you heard today as a model for things that you can do in your own state. And you heard a lot about the work of RAC California. We actually have RAC state initiatives in 9 states. So in addition to California, going kind of East Coast to West Coast, we've got Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Florida, Illinois, Ohio, and Texas. Of course, we're doing work across North America, and we've got great resources for you wherever you live. One thing you can do is through the resource that we provide on the RAC website is email your members of Congress to support the Jewish American Security Act. And if you've already done that, or if you're a member of Congress, both in the House and the Senate, because as you heard, it's in both chambers of Congress, if they're already supportive, choose 3, 4, 5 friends or family members who live elsewhere, share with them the link so that they can email their members of Congress in support for the bill too. Remember, the goal is to show as much breadth and depth of support for this bill as possible so that we can actually see it enacted. Another thing you can do is come learn more at the URJ Biennial. We'll be gathering together as a reform movement in Philadelphia this December. We're going to be talking a lot more about this issue, anti-Semitism, and others about Jewish joy, about Jewish safety, about Jewish thriving. We hope that you'll join us and be a part of it. You can also become a donor to the RAC. And if you're already a donor, thank you. We invite you to become a monthly donor. It's a great way to support the work that we're all doing together, not just in moments of urgency, but at all times. We also invite you to be part of Every Voice, Every Vote, our nonpartisan election year effort made possible in part by the Leo and Libby Nevis Foundation. You heard me mention this at the beginning of the Zoom, but this is a vital way for us to strengthen our democracy. And we know that the correlation between a weak democracy and rising anti-Semitism is strong. So our effort is to strengthen our democracy and weaken anti-Semitism, and we need your partnership to do that. With that, we're going to send out a recording after the Zoom is over with links to all the resources we mentioned. I want to thank Senator Jacky Rosen and Assemblymember Jesse Gabriel, Heidi Segal, Rabbi Rick Jacobs, Rabbi Jonah Pesner, the entire team that helped put this together on the back end, and each of you for being with us. I wish you a joyful end to the summer, and we'll see you soon. Take care, everyone.